Welcome to Focus on Southeast. I'm Andrea Gills. On today's program, we'll be talking with Suzanne Amran, Assistant Director at the Office of International Education and Services, about the challenges of studying abroad. We'll talk with Dr. Tamara Buck about how students respond to discussing various aspects of diversity in the classroom. And finally, we will talk with students Jen Grottle and Tyler King about their views on research suggesting college students live by a hookup culture. All this and more on Focus on Southeast. Stay tuned.
The Gum Tree, Cardiac Hill, and countless traditions that will make you proud to be a Red Hawk, or just gross you out. What are you waiting for? Schedule your visit today.
Welcome back. Southeast offers a wide variety of study abroad programs in more than 35 countries and enrolls more than 1,000 international students, accounting for 8% of Southeast student body. There are extra challenges that students learn to overcome while studying abroad, and which sometimes remain unnoticed. Here to talk with us about the barriers that students learn to break through is Suzanne Amran, Assistant Director at the Office of International Education and Services. Ms. Amran, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
So you have direct contact with international students from the moment they arrive to campus for orientation to graduation. What is your role and what is the role of your office in helping them, the students, with those challenges?
We work with our students from the time that they are seeking admission to Southeast all the way through graduation, as you said. We work with them through the visa process and trying to get the proper documentation to legally enter the United States. We transport them from the airport to Cape Girardeau and to Southeast upon their arrival in the country, and we work with them with an extensive orientation. We handle immigration issues, deal with cultural adjustment issues, food problems, medical issues. We really act as a stand-in family in a lot of cases, and we are a strong support system for our students that are here at Southeast.
So what are the most recurrent challenges that you see students face when they arrive to the United States and to the Southeast community?
With all students, there's a certain amount of adjustment that takes place whenever you enter the college environment. You see that in domestic students, but you see it's more pronounced within the internationals. With international students, they not only are coming to university sometimes for the first time, but they're doing that thousands of miles from their nearest family member or even their closest friend. So the challenges there are trying to reconstruct and rebuild entire support systems so that they can be successful as students and be successful individuals in their time here. Cultural adjustment can be anything from trying to adjust to different types of foods. It can be trying to adjust to living arrangements. You find cultural adjustment problems within the academic systems. So many people don't think about it, but in most foreign countries, even in the university, students attend school all day. And so what our students find in coming here is they have a lot of spare time on their hands, and how do they utilize that effectively? And sometimes they get involved. In other cases, they get bored. And so how do we handle those issues, and how do we better educate these students in ways to spend their time wisely?
So which ones of you touched on different cultural aspects. What are the most difficult ones that you think domestic students find harder to understand?
I have to think about that one because there's so many. I would say within the academic environment, which is where we find the most interaction between our domestic students and our international population, that is where there's misunderstandings. In most academic environments across the world, class participation, daily homework are not requirements of the program. They are looking more towards their midterm exams or even just a final exam. And so this daily participation and group work is a completely foreign concept to many of our students. And so you find that domestic students sometimes will voice the complaint, well, they're not really involving themselves in our group work. It's because that they're not used to it at all. There's a lot of research and a lot of discussion that's happening within faculty across the United States right now, and looking at how do we better equip these students. Do we provide intercultural competence classes whenever they first arrive, and how to deal with the academic environment that is higher education in the United States.
You talked about the misunderstandings. So how do you bridge the gap between a misunderstanding with a domestic student, an international student who may not be able to relate to each other?
It's difficult because oftentimes International Education and Services Office, we are removed from that academic environment. We are a student affairs office, so we're assisting with so many other aspects that we really do depend on the students to be able to speak up for themselves, and also faculty, making sure that faculty are engaged, that they're aware of these cultural differences, and that they can help educate their classrooms.
Is there value in working, living, and studying with someone who is from a different culture?
Absolutely, absolutely. Of course, today's trend words, the big buzzwords within human resources offices is internationalization and cultural competencies. So being able to work with and study alongside people from different countries and different backgrounds, it is so important to be able to utilize that experience effectively and be able to put it into use whenever they graduate and go out into the working environment. Human resource officers in companies, they're starting to do more research on cultural competency and looking at cultural competency as a major part in the hiring process. And so it's so important to take advantage of these opportunities that for students, domestic students at Southeast, it's been brought to them. And then of course for our students who do study abroad, making sure that they utilize those experiences to the best whenever they go abroad.
You mentioned study abroad. What benefits are there to study abroad for American students?
Again, it's going to come down to being able to engage in a different environment. Flexibility oftentimes that comes up within human resource articles talking about if you're looking for a new employee, seeing that they have the ability to be flexible, that they can enter into foreign or unknown, unfamiliar environments and be able to thrive instead of that being so overwhelming that they can't perform the job duties. And of course that is really what study abroad comes down to. It's being able to go abroad and perform because it is a study abroad. It's not a vacation.
We're going to take a break. Ms. Omran, thank you again for being with us today. Coming up, Dr. Tamara Buck on diversity and how discussions are managed in the classroom. Stay tuned to Focus on Southeast.
They say that when you're facing extreme danger, your life flashes before you. If you think that's sad, consider facing it before you even have enough life to flash before your eyes. Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Deaths and injuries can be prevented by using the right car seat. Visit safercar.gov/the-right-seat to know what is appropriate for each age and size.
So you've been admitted to Southeast. This is your next step. You don't want to miss this. Sign up for First Step today.
Welcome back to Focus on Southeast. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the United States is projected to become a majority-minority nation in less than 30 years. Anticipating this need, Southeast has been pushing for diversity awareness programs to prepare students for the future. Dr. Tamara Buck, Associate Professor in the Mass Media Department and Coordinator of the Multimedia Journalism Option, teaches diversity in the mass media. She will talk with us about her experience in the classroom and the direction in which she sees education headed. Dr. Buck, thanks for being with us here.
Thank you.
So could you explain the topics that you discuss in the classroom and why these topics need to be discussed?
I think diversity has to be a part of everything that we teach in our department because the media has such a major influence on every aspect of every person's life in our society. People don't like to admit that, but they receive conscious and subconscious messages from us constantly. So we have to be very responsible about making sure that we are representative in our messages and in our storytelling. For that reason, I teach diversity in mass communication class that all of our majors take, and the purpose of that class is really to help students recognize that and take responsibility for their role in society. Beyond that, every course that I teach has a diversity element, and we try to really ensure and reinforce the fact that our power must be used as media professionals in a way that is real for every person that we will be reaching.
So is there value in having a diverse representation in the media?
Oh, absolutely. And there's value in lots of ways. There's value in having a representative workforce just because it brings different perspectives, different experiences to the table. These people, during the information gathering process, will be able to use their experiences, use their perspectives to seek out different sources, to tell stories in different ways that reflect a very multicultural society. And their ability to do that means from the starting point, getting out of the gate, we're going to have better storytelling because we're going to have more storytelling. That also reflects value for our audiences because people who are underrepresented feel like they're not important. And that lends itself directly to a really generational devaluing that is reflected in every other part of our politics, of our society, of our educational systems. So when we tell stories better, we do a better job of storytelling, but we also enrich the experience for our audiences.
So of the topics that you discussed in class, are there any difficult ones that you find it hard to bring up to open discussion?
I don't find them difficult, but I think my students find them difficult. People are comfortable discussing gender. So when we're talking about representation of women, it's very easy to engage students and get them to open up about their experiences and their belief systems. But that becomes much more difficult when we start talking about religion and religious diversity. It becomes much more difficult when we start talking about sexual orientation. And it's still extremely difficult for people to open up about race and ethnicity. They just don't want to offend, I think, and then in other times they haven't thought about how they feel. And as a result, people are very closed, and I have to work hard to get them to open up.
So working to open them up, how do you facilitate active discussion in the classroom?
You can't take one approach. It changes every semester depending on the makeup of the classes that I have. Most often, I try to break the ice with a game, just so that they realize that diversity does matter, that it is important. And there are some very simple diversity exercises that are not challenging, and so that they're easy for people to be involved in. And then afterwards, we have a discussion where I can explain to them, do you see why this is important? Beyond that, using lots of examples. YouTube can be my best friend in terms of showing people historically where we've been and also currently where we are, just using videos and advertising messages either in print or visually, in video, or public relations case studies. There are lots of different ways for me to demonstrate using real life examples why what we do is important. Beyond that, it's simply, sometimes I have to be irreverent, and I have to be the person who challenges them to speak out, whether that means I say something that they disagree with purposefully, or I call them out and say, I want you specifically to tell me how you feel. Using all of those different teaching strategies, typically it takes me several weeks for students to feel comfortable enough to be engaged and actually maybe sometimes even initiate conversations.
So how do you foster respectful dialogue?
I demand it. I begin with the premise in my mind that everyone holds prejudices. Everyone, I tell my students that. I think it's unrealistic to think that people don't hold prejudices. Mm-hmm. What's important is for people to realize that we can overcome those. And as media professionals, it's essential that we do that. There's no way to get around that. With me, I think being so honest about that makes my students feel more comfortable. And after that, I can say, now, I will receive anything you tell me as long as you do so in a responsible and respectful manner. We're not going to fight about it, but we can certainly discuss it. And then I ensure that I never lose control of the classroom, I never lose control of the discussion, and I receive everyone's viewpoint the same way. And I think doing that enables my students to do the same thing.
Have you faced any challenges personally or as an educator in teaching this class?
Definitely. When I run into viewpoints that are counter to my own, that are counter to the norm, that are so clearly closely held prejudices that I don't think the student can overcome them, that's hard. And it's hard when sometimes it's about my gender, or it's about my race, or it's about my religion. You have to be able to overcome that, though. I can't react in a way that I wouldn't want my students to react. And so there are times when I would tell them, okay, everyone take a breather. And that breather may be for them, but it also might be for me.
Dr. Buck, our time's up. We want to thank you for sharing with us the importance of diversity in the classroom. Coming up, research says college students have a hookup culture. Do they? Jen Grottle and Tyler King are here to share with us their opinions on this topic. Stay tuned to Focus on Southeast.
They're coming. Places, everybody.
Light check. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Everything looks good on our end.
And lights.
Come alive with the forest. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
Can you help me with this? My new dad teaches me all kinds of stuff.
Sure.
He helps me with homework.
That would be 3.6795.
Thanks.
Yep.
He helps me with my decision making.
I wouldn't use this one. Ever.
And he's even teaching me how to drive.
And that's why cars have bumpers.
I'm learning so much.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of kids in foster care will take you just as you are.
suite style or community, new construction or seasoned, we have the rooms to match your personality. What are you waiting for? Schedule your visit today.
Welcome back to Focus on Southeast. The Society for the Scientific Study of Sexuality published an article discussing contemporary and historical standards of sexual behaviors, and in particular, hookup culture. Hookup culture means people engage in frequent sexual encounters without the expectation of continuing a relationship. We'll discuss what this term means to two students that we sought on campus, Jen Grottle and Tyler King. Jen, Tyler, thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So the American Psychological Association as well said in 2012 that hookup culture was arising among college students. Do you think college students have a hookup culture?
Absolutely. I think, you know, as college students, even students who aren't, you know, people who aren't in college, I just think it's, you know, our generation. I think when you come to college, you're trying to explore yourself, you know, who you want to be, what you want to do, and I think exploring your sexuality is part of that, and that's why, you know, people really engage in that kind of culture.
I agree as well. I think our generation has a lot of ambition behind it, and specifically our college students are out to find as much as they can of the world, and they view a long-term relationship as a sort of anchor, if you will, preventing them from, you know, exploring their full potential.
So this research said that it was because people are busy or they find it easier to focus on school and work. Why do you think people would engage in hookups?
You know, I think it goes back to exploring their sexuality, and you know, when you're young, you're in college, and after, you know, the 4 years, you plan on taking on a career, and it's hard to do that if you're in a relationship because you're not only thinking for yourself, you're thinking for someone else. And I think that's probably why, you know, students are more into finding out what they want in those 4 years than going and establishing a career and establishing a life somewhere else, and then looking for someone to accompany them in that stage of their life.
I agree, but I think it's less to do about exploring their sexuality and more about the career and ambitious aspect of it all. It's so hard to maintain a long-term relationship in a stable environment when you don't know where you're going to be in 10 years or so. You know, it becomes very hard to have anything with somebody like that. In fact, it can be seen as very inhibiting.
So what kind of factors do you think would influence someone to prefer having hookups instead of long-term relationships?
You know, I think it goes back to what we said, you know, career I think is a big thing, and being tied down, you know, I think it's really hard to have a stable relationship, like he said, in general, and especially at such a young age. And, you know, there's a high turnover rate when you're young. You know, relationships don't last long. You know, you date someone for a little bit and you realize that they're not the right person for you. So I really think that goes back to it. And I do think sexuality is a big thing. I think you're trying to find out what you want and what you don't want, and the hookup culture really provides that experience for you. And then you can leave college without feeling tied down or feeling like you have to think for someone else besides yourself.
Yeah, you can get around the messy parts of the relationship, like spending just an absorbent amount of time together, and work on more important things like your career or things you want to advance yourself, your passions in life.
So do you think media, peer pressure, pop culture, celebrities would have some sort of influence on the hookup culture, or people adopting it?
Yeah, you know, I think that may play a part in it. You know, you read celebrity tabloids and it's, oh, look who this person's hooking up with, or look who this person's talking to. So I think that may have a part in it, but I really don't think people look to celebrities and think, oh, well, I want to partake in a hookup culture as well. I mean, in a sense, I think it does influence it, but at the end of the day, I think it's just something that's part of our generation, and the pop culture and celebrities are just a part of that as well.
Yeah, I agree. I don't feel like the media is a huge player in getting people to hook up. That seems a bit far-fetched, but I do think the cultural atmosphere of competition and just really striving to be the best that I feel our generation has been put under puts a lot of pressure on people. And then they see they see a long-term relationship as kind of a hurdle to jump over instead of something to enjoy. You know, you see people just really striving to be the best in their class or to just get an edge in any way possible on something, and it, you know, makes any kind of commitments outside of that seem very, very difficult to attain and perpetuate.
And I think that goes back to, you know, our generation, it's so hard to find a job for us right now. So I think that everyone's so career focused, because when you get out of college, what are you going to do? You know, the economy's, you know, coming out of recession, but it's still bad. And it's more of a factor, well, I need to make a living before I can even focus on my personal life. Career is first, and then personal life comes last.
Right. I can't go out and I've got to go out and find a job. I can't stay in and pretend I enjoy watching Glee with you. That kind of thing.
You talked about our generation. Do you think social media, iPhones, apps, dating apps have played a role in facilitating that hookup culture?
Definitely. I mean, Tinder is now a new app where, you know, you swipe, and if you match with someone, it's basically just a hookup app. You meet them, the idea is to hook up with them, and then, you know, you're done. I think that definitely does play a part in it, and I think that, you know, dating apps and dating websites will always be there, but there is, you know, the dating websites like, you know, Match or eHarmony, which are meant for long-term relationships. Now, whether they work out like that, I don't know.
Right. I think I saw a statistic that 20% of long-term relationships meet online now, or something like that. And I mean, that's crazy, but you know, the internet assists in our ability to communicate with each other, and whether you think that's a good thing or not, it's here to stay. In the same way that it makes it easier to order a pizza, makes it easier to meet a lot of people.
Well, that's all the time we have for today on Focus on Southeast. This program is a collaboration of the Jane Stevens Honors Program and the TV and Film area of the Mass Media Department. I'm Andrea Gills. Thanks for watching.